Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're having a lovely day. Today I'd like to follow up on a video that I did 5 months ago on a New York Times article. This was a video titled General Motors Sells Detailed Driver Logs Without Your Consent. And it's based on this New York Times article where they're talking about how people's insurance rates were getting hiked as a result of driving General Motors vehicles that were spying on them. These vehicles were taking every piece of information that they could collect on your driving as a result of many cars nowadays having computers in them, along with cellular modems that allow them to transmit information about what you do with your car back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer was then selling that data without your consent or authorization to data brokers and insurance companies that use this data as a justification to raise your rates. And because consumer protection in the United States is a joke, whether it is the FTC fining Weber Grills and Harley Davidson $0 for breaking the Magnuson Warranty Act, which you can result in a fine of up to $30,000 to $35,000 per instance if they actually gave a shit, or the FCC deciding that they were going to fine companies 0.02%, not 2%, not 0.2%, 0.02% of their net profit for the year for selling people's user data to advertisers, bounty hunters, bail bondsmen, and God knows who else. There's a bunch of FCC documents if anybody's interested in that here. Most automakers think that they can get away with this. Ron Wyden, whether you like him or not, don't care what side of the political aisle you're on, tried to alert the regulators to this in April. He was talking about the fact that many of these auto manufacturers are providing this data to law enforcement agencies without a warrant. And then several months later, he tried to sound the alarm on the fact that many of these automotive manufacturers are selling your data to insurance companies without your consent to raise your rates. And, as Thomas Sowell said about contacting the Department of Agriculture in the 60s, in an interview in the 2010s, I patiently await their reply. It seems like the head of the Department of Agriculture in the 1960s is about as responsive as the FTC is now. Some things never change. So this is something that I take a lot of offense to. I call it something called ULIT roofing. End user license agreement, that's that 900-page document that's often written in purposely obfuscating legalese so that you don't understand what it means, that you have to hit accept to, or your software or hardware that you already paid for won't work. Roofing, which is the concept of trying to get something out of somebody that they would not otherwise consent to, whether it is using the word purchase on a product page and then on page 21 redefining the use of the word purchase to mean something completely different, such as something that they could revoke at any given time, or we're talking about this, where they're just trying to get you to consent to giving up all of your driving data without you really understanding what's going on. The irony here is that all the automotive manufacturers, under a name of the Coalition of Safe and Secure Data, spent $25 million to convince people that if you were able to have an independent mechanic fix your car, that you might be sexually assaulted in a parking lot as a result of them having access to your personal data. Now, one of the questions that most of you asked, which is a great question, is why the fuck is my car collecting my personal data? This is a standard case of projection. The automakers were accusing independent repair centers of that which they were doing themselves. They accused independent mechanics of potentially being able to rape consumers, literally, in a parking lot if they were able to fix their vehicles, when in reality, there's not a single reported case of that happening as a result of a repair tool being available. What does happen is the manufacturer, without your consent, takes your data from you, which in my opinion is much closer to rape than what repair mechanics do when they fix your car for $200 and the dealer tells you to be $6,000. But moving on here, this is a case that I am very, very happy to see move forward, which is a case in Texas regarding this particular abuse of the law. Because the federal protection agencies in the United States have done nothing, the Attorney General in the state of Texas decided to try and punish General Motors himself. Now, to be clear, when our Attorney General here in Texas tries to cosplay as Dr. Ken Paxton, fuck him. Like, really, if somebody has a fetus that is going to die the moment it comes out, it's going to live in pain, and probably is going to cause you to not be able to have a future pregnancy, and this man pretends to be a doctor, fuck you. When he decides that he is going to try to fight for consumer rights so that General Motors cannot steal the data of hundreds of millions of people in every state in the U.S., I'll take it. I'll take it. We don't have consumer protection in America, whether it's Ron Wyden as a Democrat, whether it's Ken Paxton's Republican. I don't give a shit what letter's next to your name. Keep these fucking companies from obtaining my data illegally and then selling it, and I'm happy. Do your job. It appears like he's actually doing the job that he was hired for, which is an attorney general, rather than the job he was not hired for, which is a doctor. And I'll take it. So I wanted to read over the primary document of his case, and it's a 36-page document. It's a lot of crap in here, but I was going to read over the parts that I highlighted that I thought are relevant to all of you. So let's get into this. General Motors deceptively collected driving habits and monetized that data by selling it. Since 2015, General Motors has installed technology in its vehicles that it advertises improving safety, that collects, records, analyzes, and transmits highly specific driving data, and they sold this driving data. GM entered into agreements with purchasing companies that were to use the driving data to calculate a customer driving score based on risk factors developed by GM. Bad driving factors included late night driving, driver and passenger seatbelt status, instances of sharp turns, hard braking, hard acceleration events, and driving over 80 miles an hour. Now, while some of you may think, okay, this is great, I don't want people who are bad drivers getting insured cheaply, this may motivate them to drive better. Point taken, but what you may not understand is that these systems are complete and utter dog shit. As anybody who used a Tesla between 2021 and 2022 who tried to enroll in full self-driving knows, these systems are garbage, and many people tried to game these systems in very unsafe ways. For instance, in 2021 and 2022, in order to get into the Tesla full self-driving program, because this car would actively try to kill you when you turned on full self-driving, they only allowed the best drivers that were the most safe to be able to use this feature. Because again, if you're not paying attention 100% of the time, and even if you are, this car will try to kill you. Full self-driving sucks. They would have required that you had a very high safety score, and they would rate you on things like following distance, hard braking, turning radius, and all this type of stuff. The problem with these systems is that they don't make sense, for lack of a better way to put it. If you were to hit your brakes because a drunk driver in front of you skid and did this, it didn't matter that you were 5 or 6 car following distance away, that there was somebody in the left lane and no shoulder on this road. If you smashed the brakes so that you did not die, you would be marked down as having unsafe driving. The way that that worked is any time that you used the brake more than the regenerative braking already in the car, they assumed that you must be driving poorly because you needed to use the mechanical brakes. A Tesla has 2 types of brakes. Many electric cars do. The first type is your standard mechanical brakes, where you touch the brakes, squeezes the calipers, and your car slows down. The second is regenerative braking. Electric motors and electric cars can act as a generator where it resists the moving of the car and uses that resistance to charge the battery. If you were using more than the regenerative braking, this would result in your driving score being pushed down. So this would actually incentivize people to drive in a very unsafe manner. Either A, you would try to game the system by going off to a cornfield somewhere, which is read the forums. A lot of people have done this. You just go off to a cornfield somewhere and drive slowly in a circle over and over again to get a good driving score, thereby breaking the system. Or 2, they would drive in a very unsafe manner. So for instance, let's say this person is over here and I was going 60 miles an hour. There is a traffic light that immediately turns red and I have to stop. I may risk it and say, okay, let's see if the regenerative braking is enough that I don't hit this car. And I may slow down right over here before I hit it. Usually I would use the combo of the regenerative braking and a couple of taps on the brake so that I stop here. But I may be incentivized to drive in this unsafe manner. I'm going to try to gamble in GME option 0-day expiry, game the system by seeing how close can I get without hitting the brake so that I don't wind up getting a lower safety score. Everything that people are going to do to try to game the system to have a high safety score, because the AI in the car is a piece of shit that cannot properly judge whether or not you are a good or bad driver, is going to result in people actually driving worse on the road, which is why this is a serious problem, and particularly why I don't think anybody should be consenting to this in the first place. General Motors profited handsomely. It unlocked millions in lump sum payments, royalty payments based on telematics exchange licenses sold to insurers, and annual guaranteed payments if GM sold the driving data of a threshold number of newly sold vehicles. GM represented to purchasing companies that its customers had consented to the collection and sale of their driving data. General Motors engaged in a series of misleading and deceptive acts and practices. GM's practice was to subject consumers to a stressful process of onboarding. This appeared to be a mandatory prerequisite. Again, this is the roofing part over here. They would never get you to accept this shit if you believe that you didn't have to get the vehicle. A deceptively designed sales flow ensured that customers would sign up for GM's products and unwittingly be enrolled in GM's driving data collection scheme. It electronically presented customers with over 50 pages of disclosures and a confusing series of applicable user terms and privacy notices. These were highly confusing and misleading, and they falsely implied that data collected by GM would be used for reasons related primarily to improving the safety, functionality, and operability of its vehicles. Now, when they keep saying safety and how this is going to improve your safety, I want you to understand the terminology they're using here, because right over here they do the same thing again, where they talk about enhancing the safety and security, because this is the very same terminology that you hear used against right to repair. When talking about right to repair and why I can't get access to a charging chip to be able to fix your motherboard, they'll bring up security of data and how for some reason if I get access to a charging chip or a schematic that allows me to replace a fuse in a motherboard, that means that your data is going to be stolen. Safety, they always talk about the safety because you're allowed to change the brake pads on a 6,000-pound F350 going down the road at 80 miles an hour, but you're not allowed to change a 3.7 volt lithium-ion single-cell battery in a device because that may kill you. They're always talking about safety and security to try to fearmonger you into doing what it is they want, whether it's sucking up as much of your data as humanly possible or preventing you from being able to maintain your own personal property or choosing who can maintain your own personal property. The reason I talk about so much more on this channel now than just fixing MacBooks is because fixing MacBooks was similarly a 0.1% canary in the coal mine. It was a microcosm of what's going on in the rest of the world. What I saw happening with me, I thought was something that was very unique with me when I saw these types of anti-consumer practices, anti-independent repair practices, when in reality, these same justifications are used to rob you of your consumer rights across the board nowadays. And I want to go over all of them so that people push back against them, because it's not just right to repair, and it's not just Apple. At no point did General Motors inform customers that its practice was to sell any of their data, much less their driving data. Nor did General Motors disclose that it had contracts in place to make its customers' driving scores available to other companies. Nor did GM disclose that it contracted to permit companies to resell customers' driving scores to insurers. GM incentivized employees through commissions, so they're now getting people to try and sign people up for this practice under a commission, which means that they are incentivized to not tell you that you don't have to sign this to take away your vehicle. You're incentivizing the dealer employees to continue to mislead the customers, as if the end user license agreement and process they're going through is not misleading enough as is, which we're going to show you very shortly. Many customers being enrolled without their knowledge or consent. If a customer attempted to decline to enroll, they would be shown various warning messages which represented that declining would result in the deactivation of several of their vehicle safety features. I'm going to show you that in a few. I forget exactly where that is, but I do know I highlighted it. Customers could receive a discount from their insurer if they exhibited good driving behavior. To show good driving behavior, customers would install an insurer-provided device into their vehicle that monitored their driving data. GM began manufacturing vehicles equipped with technology to be able to directly obtain the same data from its vehicles that the insurer-provided devices would have otherwise collected. The telematics system is composed of both hardware and software. The hardware component consists of internal and external cameras, a range of sensors, and the software component is produced by OnStar. Unlike the original usage-based insurance programs that required customers to install an optional device and which use driving data to reward good driving behavior, GM used the telematics system to unilaterally collect its customers' driving data and sell it in a manner that penalized their bad driving behavior. And this is all the information they collected. They literally connected so much information that they ran out of letters to use as bullet points and had to resort to double letters. It is just GPS latitude coordinate, total fuel used. There was GPS elevation, GPS estimated horizontal positioning error, just everything on this car. Speed over 80 miles an hour, as if there are not roads in Texas with an 80 mile per hour speed limit, where driving with traffic means maybe driving 83 or 85 from time to time. They are penalizing you for driving your car in a legal manner. GM treated the downloading and enrolling of the app as the customer's agreement to the collection and sale of their personal data. Does this sound familiar? As to when Disney tried to justify not allowing somebody to take them to court when somebody died on their property because they signed a Disney Plus streaming agreement that had forced arbitration in it for a streaming app. Whether or not you think that that restaurant or Disney should be penalized is irrelevant. Let the court decide that. Let a judge decide that. Let the jury decide that. Not an arbitrator that Disney pays. For customers that were taken through GM's onboarding process, the onboarding process appeared to be a mandatory prerequisite to taking ownership of their vehicle. However, the onboarding process was no more than a deceptively designed sales flow to ensure that customers would sign up for the connected vehicle services and unwittingly be enrolled in GM's driving data collection scheme. GM's system instructed the employee to show the screen to the customer, which displayed a message that further made the onboarding process appear mandatory. The screen instructed the customer to complete the next few steps before taking ownership of their vehicle. Neither GM nor dealership employees inform customers that they are not required to complete the onboarding process. And why would they if there is a commission for getting them to complete the misleading onboarding process where they roofie away your data? Why would they let you know that? They are financially incentivized to not do that, not just at the corporate level, but at the salesman level. This is disgusting. The entire system is designed to try and get you to give away data that you did not consent to giving away so that you could wind up getting screwed. These people are getting paid off of the back. All of these salespeople, they're getting paid off of the backs of your increased insurance premiums because of a shit-ass AI algorithm that can't tell a good driver from a drunk dude on I-35 after getting wasted on 6th Street on a Friday night. After selecting the Get Started button, GM overwhelmed customers with information by providing them with a screen containing a 29-page user terms for connected vehicle services, an 18-page General Motors U.S. Connected Services privacy statement, a link to AT&T's terms and conditions, a link to AT&T's network management practices, a vehicle ownership acknowledgement statement, and finally an I accept and I decline checkbox with both options for more information. And you can see all this stuff over here. And the disgusting part is over here about vehicle security. GM presented customers with safety warning messages if they tried to decline the connected vehicle services. Any customer that selected I decline option received a warning message that misleadingly claimed that declining would result in the deactivation of connected vehicle services, even though at this point in the onboarding process, customers had not yet enrolled in connected vehicle services. This is bull. This is lying. And even forget about the lying part of it. Result in deactivation of including automatic crash response. This is the whole thing where I crash, maybe I pass out, the car automatically calls 911 for me. What the fuck does that have to do with selling my data to a fucking data broker or insurance company so they could raise my rate? These two things are completely unrelated, but they are pretending that they are, by utilizing this as a justification for taking away all of your data without your consent. When they say that you consented to this, no, you fucking didn't. No, you didn't. What you consented to was the ability or to have or not have as a feature the car calling 911 if you get into a crash. This has nothing to do with selling your personal data to a bunch of fucking scumbags. Continuing on. While the specifics of GM's various user terms and privacy statements varied, they all shared several things in common. None of them informed customers that GM would sell their data, nor did they disclose that GM would sell their driving data. GM left customers with the impression that it did not sell their data. This is the only instance where GM even gestures towards the possibility of sharing any information with insurers. It implies that it is shared only with a customer's authorization. It lumps this minimal disclosure in with utterly inapposite and unrelated information, such as that GM has business relationships with SiriusXM, a satellite radio company, and that it interacts with research institutes to improve highway safety, to the point that the disclosure itself is meaningless. The terms of us being able to kill you if you eat at a restaurant on our premises are, let's just tie that into a streaming service. This is a meme. We're selling your data, and by the way, here's us talking about SiriusXM. It's all a meme at this point. You keep like just conflating everything together like this, as if it's at all related. GM markets Smart Driver to customers as a tool for them to monitor their own driving behavior, instead of disclosing any of the consequences of a bad driving score. GM framed Smart Driver and the score it generated as a feature that's purely beneficial to consumers. It provides driving feedback that can help drivers improve vehicle performance, drive more carefully, save on gas, and reduce wear and tear on the vehicle. It tells you what your score tells you, but nowhere in where it tells you what your score does it say that this regular feedback will result in your insurance rates being upped or other people having access to your personal data. In 2015, GM entered into the first of many agreements to sell customers driving data. This has been going on for 9 years. A lot of people in this channel go, F electric vehicles, you're an idiot if you drive an EV because they're taking all this data from you. Most of GM's vehicles in 2015 were internal combustion. You don't need a vehicle to be electric in order to have a computer in it, nor do you need a vehicle to be electric for them to be able to suck up all of your data. This is happening across the board, which is why it's very important that regardless of what you drive, whether you're driving a Mini Cooper, whether you're driving a smart car, whether you're driving a Tesla, Ford Mach-E, F-150, Silverado, whatever the fuck you drive, this affects you because every company is starting to do this, and they've been doing it for a very long time. It doesn't matter the type of vehicle you drive. As long as it is something that has a cellular connection, it's able to do this. As long as it has a computer that is smarter than some anti-lock brake system from 1992 in a Pontiac Grand Prix, it has the ability to do this type of shit. Verisk is an agreement that a company they had an agreement with in 2015. Upon purchasing a Verisk exchange license, insureds could use the Verisk exchange to search for the driving scores of their insureds or potential insureds and then use that information to financially harm GM customers, including by denying prospective insureds insurance, increasing current insureds' monthly premiums, or dropping their insureds from coverage entirely. GM entered into agreement with WeHo Limited, WeHo's. General Motors sold WeHo the driving data so that WeHo could sell licenses for other companies to access the driving data. Sound like a bunch of hoes to me. GM bought a 35% ownership interest in WeHo for $25 million. So now they're whoring themselves out to GM. And agreed to provide WeHo with the driving data from 2018 of 2.6 million vehicles, valued at $70 million. Let's just keep that in mind. 2.6 million vehicles, and that alone. And the fact that they have GM actually bought an interest in the company that they're providing the data to on customers that they got data from without their consent, by incentivizing their employees via commissions to collect from you in a misleading manner. Our consumer protection agencies at the federal level are useless. Defendants falsely, expressly, or by implication misrepresented the benefits and risks of its products and their related features to customers. They were silent to risks associated with their information sharing practices, and they repeatedly sold their data in a manner that it knew it could harm consumers through higher car insurance premiums, being dropped from coverage, or being denied coverage. And at the end of it, we finally get to the punishments here, which is really cool. The conclusion. The state of Texas respectfully requests that the Honorable Court impose civil penalties of not more than $10,000 per violation or not more than $250,000 per violation. So if we have about 2 million people, You add 4 zeros onto that, 20 million, 200 million, 2 billion, 20 billion. Now we're talking about a real fine. $20 billion fine sounds good to me for starters, and I'm sure a bunch of these people were over 65 years old. And that's just for one company that they sold data to. 2.7 million people times 10,000? Let's go. Directing defendants to delete or otherwise destroy all driving data obtained prior to the entry of any judgment by this court, including any driving data in the possession of any third party. Directing defendants to make full restitution to all customers who suffered a loss as a result of the acts and practices alleged in this complaint. So if your insurance went up as a result of this, like it did for this gentleman in the New York Times article, if we take a look at the article over here and see what his insurance went up to, let's see. It jumped by 21%. Let's say your insurance, I don't know, let's just pull a number out of my ass. Let's say it's $20, $50, anything like that, depending on what your original insurance was. Millions of people. That's going to be a hefty sum, and I'm happy that they'd have to pay it. It also says that they have to delete all of the data. So again, you have to make full restitution, delete all the data. While I'm happy with this, it still could use a little more. I don't just want to be paid for what I was harmed. I want to be paid with interest. More importantly, I would want to be paid for you having used my data at all, not just the harm. If you want to use my data, you have to pay me. If somebody comes up to me and says, I want to know everything that you're doing all the time, you have to pay me for that. I wouldn't even sell that for any amount in the world. But if I were to sell it, I would put a price on it. And you need to pay that price in addition to a penalty. But this is a start. And again, while many of you out there may say, fuck Ken Paxton, or some of you out there that are hardcore Republicans are like, the Democrat Ron Wyden is horrible. Can you guys just fuck off for a moment and just be happy that somebody is going out there? Again, to be clear, fuck Dr. Ken Paxton, but I'm okay with him going after General Motors. When Dr. Ken Paxton is trying to fuck over somebody that is a fatal birth that is going to result in them not being able to conceive into the future, screw him. When Ken Paxton is doing his job that he was actually hired for and being an attorney general and protecting consumers and trying to go fuck General Motors in the ass so nobody ever does this shit again, yeah, I'm for that. Do that. Do your job. Do your job. Go. I don't care if you have a D next to your name, an R next to you. I don't give a fuck what any of your beliefs are. Can somebody do the job that the FTC and the FCC are not doing? I prefer this be done at the federal level, because if you have 50 states filled with people that have been harmed, again, let's just say it's 10,000 per instance, I'd much rather have that for all 50 states than one state. I don't want General Motors to not take part in this practice only in Texas. I want General Motors to not take part in this practice anywhere where vehicles are sold. And that requires the federal government to actually get involved and fine them. I think almost everybody in this audience, regardless of who you voted for, don't want automotive manufacturers collecting data from your car without your consent, selling it to insurance companies, and using it to raise your rates. This is as bipartisan as it gets. A bill should be passed in Congress banning shit like this, like that. Like who cares? Every single member of the Senate and the House of Representatives, universally, should be giving General Motors the finger. This is not a cultural war issue. This is not like an ideological issue. You're getting fucked by people who lied to you. And there's something should be done about it. I hope he does something about it. I hope he wins. Not going to support Ken Paxton when he tries to keep women from being able to conceive into the future by being a doctor. But I'll support him here. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now. By the way, for those of you wondering why I switched back to this chair rather than using the desk with the Aeron chair, even though that was better for doing work, I didn't have a place for the kitty to sit. And when the kitty doesn't have a place to sit, the kitty decides that he wants to unplug the HDMI cord. He wants to tug at shit. He wants to knock my lights down. One time, I'm not kidding, he started tapping on my computer and he hit the fucking power button and turned it off in the middle of a video. Many of you have wondered, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this when I'm doing all my videos? It's because of the fucking cat. You may notice that there's less jump cuts in this video. I usually do my videos in close to one take, except for when the cat fucks with me. When the cat is not able to be next to me because I have a chair that is single player, he lets me know that he's pissed. He's a menace. See you in the next one. Bye now.